Donald Trump promised the ultimate retribution. He promised to clean house, drain the swamp, and hold the deep state accountable. But instead of a reckoning, we just watched the Department of Justice commit one of the greatest unforced errors in modern legal history. As of this morning, James Comey is walking free, and Alina Habba has been fired by a federal appeals court. Now, these people weren't freed necessarily because they were innocent, and they weren't freed because of some liberal conspiracy, but rather because the Trump Department of Justice apparently forgot how to read the instruction manual on how to hire a government employee. We are witnessing a procedural singularity, a moment where the administrative state didn't need to fight back because the administration tripped over its own shoelaces. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how a paperwork error just gave James Comey a get-out-of-jail-free card and why personnel is policy is the most painful lesson so far of 2025. To understand this disaster, we have to look at two different battlegrounds that imploded within 48 hours of each other: New Jersey and Virginia. Now, the plan was simple. The president wanted his people in charge of the U.S. attorney offices, the most powerful prosecutors in the country. In New Jersey, he wanted his former personal attorney, Alina Habba. In Virginia, he wanted another former personal attorney, Lindsey Haugen. Now, what is the problem with the president appointing these people? Well, the problem is the Senate and the Constitution. According to the Constitution, the Senate actually has to confirm these people. And even with a Republican majority, confirming the president's personal defense lawyers to run federal prosecution offices has so far been, let's say, a heavy lift. So the administration, unable to actually follow the Constitution, tried a workaround. They tried using acting appointments to bypass the Senate. Now, normally this can be standard operating procedure. Every president does it to varying degrees, but there are rules. Specifically, the Federal Vacancies Reform Act and 28 U.S.C. 546. These statutes are the terms of service for the executive branch. Now, most people might just click agree and move on. The Trump DOJ decided to treat them like mere suggestions, and that's where the wheels fell off the bus. So let's start in New Jersey with Alina Habba. Habba was appointed a so-called interim U.S. attorney. Now, under law, that term lasts for 120 days. When that clock runs out, the power to appoint the next guy shifts to the district court. The district court took a look at Habba and said, no thanks, and moved to appoint her deputy. So the DOJ tried a maneuver that I can only describe as a Russian nesting doll strategy. Step 1, they fired the deputy, so there was a vacancy. Step 2, Habba resigned as the acting boss. Step 3, they hired Habba as the first assistant, a lower job. Step 4, they argued under the Vacancies Act, the first assistant automatically becomes the boss when there's a vacancy. So you catch that? They appointed her basically as her own subordinate and then argued because the boss's position was vacant, she becomes boss by operation of law. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wait, can you just hire someone into the number 2 job specifically to promote them to the number 1 job 5 minutes later? Well, that's exactly what the Third Circuit Court of Appeals was asked, and the answer was a unanimous no. Now, critically, this wasn't a panel of liberal activists. The opinion for the Third Circuit was written by Judge Fisher, a George W. Bush appointee. He applied the concept known as textualism, which is, of course, a thing conservatives are supposed to love, and the text of the statute didn't read the way the administration wanted it to. The court ruled that the first assistant loophole only works if there was a first assistant when the vacancy started. So you can't hire a first assistant after the vacancy exists just to fill it. The court said if they allowed this, the president could just hire any private citizen off the street, call them first assistant for a day, and make them U.S. attorney forever. It would make the Senate confirmation process, as well as the constitutional advice and consent role, a joke. So Alina Habba is disqualified. She's out. Now, this is just a firing. It's embarrassing, but fixable. What happened in Virginia, however, that was more of a catastrophe. In the Eastern District of Virginia, they wanted the DOJ to indict James Comey and Letitia James. The problem? The local prosecutors didn't want to do it. So they sent in Lindsey Haugen. Now, here's the issue. The Attorney General used her 120-day appointment power on the previous guy, Eric Sibit. When Sibit resigned, the DOJ tried to use the 120-day power again to appoint Haugen. And here's where the statute matters. 28 U.S.C. 546 gives the AG one bite at the apple. Once those 120 days up, the power belongs to the district court by operation of law. Judge Cameron McGowan Curry ruled that because the AG had already used her turn, she had zero power to make this appointment for Haugen. So do you understand what that actually means? It doesn't mean that Haugen was a bad prosecutor. It means legally, she wasn't a prosecutor at all. She was effectively a private citizen walking into a grand jury room. Now, a private citizen cannot convene a grand jury. A private citizen cannot sign an indictment. Therefore, the indictments against Comey and Letitia James weren't just dismissed. They were declared void ab initio. That's Latin for it never happened. Void from the beginning. Legally speaking, those indictments are mere ghost stories. And of course, there's a kicker. The absolute chief of this incompetence, the statute of limitations for James Comey's alleged crimes, expired in late September. The DOJ filed the defective charges just days before the deadline. Now that the indictments are void, the deadline has passed, and they cannot refile because the statute has passed. They can't fix this like it's a typo. James Comey walks free forever on these charges. The Trump DOJ didn't just lose the case. They effectively pardoned James Comey by waiting until the last minute and then sending in someone who was unappointed to do the job. Now, I know the comment section is going to be full of people saying, this is deep state judges protecting their own. It's a two-tier justice system. Stop it, my friends. This isn't the deep state. This is dyed-in-the-wool conservative legal principles, like textualism and originalism, actually following the statutes and what it means. This was an unforced error. If you're a conservative, this should make you furious. Not at the judges who are actually applying the law as it was written, but at the lawyers who set this up thinking they could get around the rule of law. The White House, for its part, is screaming about unitary executive, and the president can hire whoever he wants. Well, that's nice and all, but in the real world, there are statutes. Congress has defined rules, and there is paperwork. If you want to dismantle the administrative state, you have to be smarter than the administrative state. You can't drain the swamp if you drown in the rule book. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Uncivil, isn't this all just a technicality? Well, I suppose in one sense it is a technicality, but technicalities are how people stay out of prison. There is law. You can't claim to be the party of law and order and then ignore the very laws that govern how to hire prosecutors. The irony here is crushing. The DOJ tried to shortcut the process to get loyalists into power. And because they took the shortcut, they lost the ability to prosecute the very people they were targeting. Letitia James, for her part, is now taking a victory lap. Comey, of course, is claiming vindication. And they didn't have to prove their innocence. They just had to point out the prosecutor didn't have a valid ID badge. But what do you think, friends? Do you think that this is fair application of the rule of law and statutes as written? Or do you think this is more evidence of the deep state? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. I'm eager to hear more. Until next time, I've been Uncivil Law. And remember, to keep it uncivil out there. Peace.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.